Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be doing our final review of Euro 2020. We've just put out our predictions review where we compared to other YouTubers. It did pretty well, came second out of 16 YouTubers. It's not bad. There were some big names in there: Spencer FC, Mini Minter, Stunt Peg, Pie Face. There's some big names in there. Thogden. So hope you enjoyed that video. I'll leave a link to that one up above me if you want to go and watch that before you watch this one. But this is going to be my rewards and review of the tournament as a whole and how I found this tournament. Spoiler alert, I absolutely loved it. One of the best tournaments that I have seen. Being an England fan, it was very easy to make that conclusion. So I hope you enjoy this video. So, onto my awards and the review of the tournament. I'm not going to do it too long because UEFA have provided their own awards and I'm sure that they feel that they're more qualified than I am to give awards out. But I felt like I should probably give a few, and I think that mine differ slightly to the awards that were given out. So we're going to start with the Player of the Tournament award, and UEFA gave this to Gianluigi Donnarumma. Great choice, fantastic throughout, unbelievable goalkeeper, saved loads of penalties, you know, fair enough. But I am going to give it to his teammate Leonardo Bonucci because I feel like Bonucci absolutely performed unbelievably at this tournament. He was a huge reason why Italy got to where they were, and I thought that Chiellini was equally as good as him defensively, but Chiellini played one game less due to injury, and or half a game less I suppose, due to injury. And also I feel like there was this one thing in the final that made me sway it to Bonucci's side. And basically in the first half, in the first 20 minutes or so, England were having a lot of joy with balls up towards Harry Kane. Harry Kane was winning everything. The man marking him was Chiellini at this point, and basically Harry Kane was winning everything. He was backing into him, winning the header, knocking it down for the midfield to kind of get into the game, and England were getting into the game and got the goal, of course. However, Mancini then made a great decision, swapped Chiellini and Bonucci over. So Bonucci was now on Harry Kane, and I don't think Harry Kane won a header for the rest of the game. It just showed me that little bit extra level of want, and his ability in the air was just the thing that separated him from Chiellini, I suppose. So yeah, overall Leonardo Bonucci was absolutely fantastic for this tournament. There are a couple of players that could have won this award from England's view, maybe Spain with Pedri. They were really good. Maybe a couple of the Denmark lads. Luke Shaw would certainly have been a shout. Maguire, Sterling, Rice, people like that would have certainly been a shout. But I think you have to give it to someone who led the tournament all the way through, was consistent all the way through, got the goal in the final. Let's not forget Bonucci did score in the final, although a very scrappy goal, but came up when it was important, played like he wanted it more than anyone else, and ultimately he loves defending, he loves heading, he loves tackling, he loves keeping clean sheets. And he just looked like he was loving the whole time he was there. Same with Chiellini, that pair just looked like they were enjoying themselves. And that's why I've given Bonucci the Player of the Tournament award. Well done, Leonardo. Now, onto the MVP here. This necessarily isn't the Player of the Tournament. This is the player that I believe if you took them out of the squad, their team would have done far, far worse. Not necessarily because they performed amazingly, but just because I don't think anyone else could do that job. It was a job that was so important for the team that they play for, and that player and that team is England and Kyle Walker. I don't think anybody could have done what Kyle Walker did at this tournament, and that's because of his pure pace and defensive intelligence. Weirdly, he was played in sort of a cover role where he was allowed to go forward when he was in right back position, but he was always there to mop up at the back if someone sprayed a ball over from the left-hand side. If the ball was on the left, Kyle Walker was at right back, not right wing back. He was at right back. Every time the ball was played over the top of Stones and Maguire, or Stones and Mings earlier on in the tournament, Kyle Walker swept in with his ridiculous pace and mopped up. Any crosses to the back post on that far left-hand side, attacking left-hand side, Kyle Walker was there to nod back to the goalkeeper. Under pressure, so well, so solid. He made no mistakes in this tournament from a defensive position. He did make some passing errors, and perhaps people will criticise my decision because of his more attacking movement wasn't really there for England. He lost the ball probably more than anyone else in the team percentage-wise, but I think his defensive acumen served him so well in this tournament. He barely made a mistake. In fact, he was the only player in the tournament to play as many games as he did to get 0 players dribble past him. 0. Nobody dribbled past Kyle Walker at this tournament. Unbelievable stats. And yeah, I think he really served England better than anyone predicted. An old head as well in the England team, one of the aging players, one of the older players. Yeah, he gave himself a good account of himself, and I'm sure he will be at the World Cup in 2022 if he doesn't retire from international football. I'm sure he won't. But yeah, no, fantastic from Kyle Walker, and he is my MVP of the tournament. Could have gone to Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw equally was really good, but his contribution was more attacking, and I felt that if Ben Chilwell was there, we would have had some of what Luke Shaw did. Not all of it. I think Luke Shaw overachieved, absolutely did fantastically the whole tournament. But I just think that another attacking left back would have done what he did, whereas I don't think Trippier did what Kyle Walker did. I don't think Reece James would have done what Kyle Walker did. I don't think Trent Alexander-Arnold, had he been fit, would have done what Kyle Walker did, and that is why he is irreplaceable. England's lifeline when the ball went over the top, and it did a couple of times. Denmark in particular, they played a couple of balls over the top, and just you watched him like speed through past the defender, past the attacker, tap the ball back to the goalkeeper. Just every time made clean, good tackles. Walker MVP. Now, onto the surprise of the tournament, and this is a player who I did not predict would be as important for their team as they turned out to be. I think a lot of people would have Luke Shaw here, for example. Mourinho in particular didn't really rate him before the tournament. He ended up making the left-back position completely his own, played really well throughout the tournament. I think Kyle Walker's a good shout here. Not many people played him in their teams as well. Some people even left him at home. I think there is a couple of players from the Spanish team. Patrick Schick for the Czech Republic. He was so good for the Czech Republic. Nearly won the Golden Boot. Fantastic performance from him. Dragged his team through. I don't think many people predicted him to be so good. However, the player I'm going to give it to, little bit of bias maybe, is Jordan Pickford. Jordan Pickford played absolutely fantastically this tournament. Unbelievable from him. Really solidified him in my mind and a lot of people's minds as England's #1 goalkeeper now. And I think no one can really argue with his inclusion in the squad. And that is where I need to give him the biggest apologies, because I said that he should be left, not left at home, but left on the bench. Certainly, I thought that Henderson should take the spot. I thought that Pope should take the spot. Unfortunately, both were injured. Then I would have put Pickford in. But Pickford has proved to me this tournament by being the biggest rock at the back, the best goalkeeper, one of the best goalkeepers in the entire tournament, easily England's best goalkeeper. He has proved that he is going to keep that #1 jersey for years and years to come, and unless someone young comes along and performs at world-class level, I don't think anyone's going to take that from him until he retires. And he got England far, and that save in the final as well, I have to go in and talk about that. Some of the saves in the final. The save for the goal was unbelievable, just needed someone to clear him up off the line. I actually think it's a world-class save. It's just really unfortunate that he hits the inside of the post rather than the foot of the post. If he hits the foot of the post there, he pulls off an unbelievable save, and England get away with some really poor defending from the corner, but the save was really good. But the saves I want to talk about from the final in particular are the penalty saves. To stare Jorginho down in the face, to look him down, someone who waits for the goalkeeper to dive and then places their penalty, to stare at him and say, nah, I'm going to wait until you move. I'm going to wait until you've chosen where to go. So brave, so confident, and that penalty save for that particular one was fantastic. And the Belotti save as well, of course, a really good penalty save. So yeah, brilliant from Pickford throughout the tournament. A lot of credits due to him. There was the big save against Germany where he tipped the ball over the bar. There was a couple of good saves against Denmark. There was obviously some great saves against Scotland to keep us in that game. He was fantastic throughout. Really was a great goalkeeper and deserved winner of this award. Onto the team of the tournament then, and when you go through it, goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders and forward players. And so let's start with the goalkeeper, and there's only 2 real contenders for this, maybe 3 if you include Kasper Schmeichel, who was great for Denmark. It's either going to be Pickford or it's going to be Donnarumma, and the player that I've gone for here is Donnarumma. Although I've given Pickford the surprise package award, I don't think you can ignore how important Donnarumma was for Italy in this tournament, especially when it came down to penalty saves. He saved some penalties in both the semis and the final, and good penalty saves as well. None of them were tragically bad penalties. They were penalties that you would probably expect a goalkeeper who was going the right way to save. But yeah, fantastic saving from Donnarumma. 6'5". He's massive, isn't he? He's really good at getting down low, get some good saves. There's a couple of saves in the final from headers as well that he made, and in the semis as well. Yeah, fantastic from Donnarumma, and you'll see in a minute why there's so much Italy in this team and why they did so well and didn't concede that many goals. So let's move on to the defence, where I've got Kyle Walker at right back, Bonucci and Chiellini at centre back, and Shaw at left back. Walker we've already talked about, Bonucci we've already talked about. Chiellini was fantastic in this tournament, really positive, and captained the team like he knew that he could. Like, really good performance from him. Clinical in the tackle, actually really clever as well. The moment in the final where he grabs the back of Saka and pulls him back is actually really important, because that moment Saka is away. He is away from him, and Bonucci is not catching up to cover that. It'd have to be a one-on-one with the goalkeeper there, and I back Saka in that situation, so it's actually really clever defending to take the yellow card. And because he's on the wing, and Bonucci is technically going to get there, maybe, I don't think he is because of Saka's pace, but he is in a position to cover, it can't be a red card. So he's been really clever there, and he was throughout, and pushed forward as well. When England needed to be pressed back, he joined the attack and pressed them back. Chiellini was fantastic, and then Luke Shaw at left back. His contributions to England were nothing short of unbelievable. Got forward when he needed to, was always a passing option, made some important tackles, got the goal in the final, wonderful finish as well, half volleyed into the ground to make sure Donnarumma wasn't going to save it. Really good from him. Don't think he could have done any more for England, and has solidified that left back position, which previously I didn't think was his. Chilwell won the Champions League this season. Chilwell played so good for Chelsea this season. I didn't think that Shaw would be the one that Southgate went with. He did, and it was the right decision. Well played, Gareth, in that situation, and well played, Luke Shaw. Onto the midfield here, and there were a few players that have completely missed out here that could have been easily a player in this team in the tournament. I'm thinking Jorginho could have been here. I'm thinking Phillips for England could have been here. But the team I have gone with for the three midfielders is Pedri for Spain, Forsberg for Sweden, and Declan Rice for England. The reason I put Declan Rice here is because I just think he produced a performance which I didn't even know he had in him in the whole tournament as a whole. He was consistently good in the air, consistently good in the pass, consistently good in the tackle, quelled a lot of attacks, made lots of interceptions, and ultimately he was fantastic for England. And he did things like marauding forward, taking on players, doing a little bit of skill here and there that I didn't think Rice had in him. Some really good arrow passes through to send England onto attacks, into Sterling, into Kane, that kind of thing. And I think Rice showed elements of his game that makes him one of the best players in that position in the world right now. I'm not exaggerating to say that. I think he is certainly a world-class holding midfielder, and I think any team would be lucky to have him. So yeah, well played to Declan Rice. Forsberg for Sweden got 4 goals, dragged his team through the group stage, won the group, a group that they weren't expected to win. They had Spain and Poland in that group. Difficult group for them to win, came out of nowhere. A team that people perhaps wrote off very early on. A lot of people put them bottom of this group in the YouTuber predictions. I certainly did as well, and Forsberg did really well and dragged his team through, so I couldn't not put him in here, even though Jorginho was perhaps a more obvious choice. Verratti maybe. Phillips played unbelievably for England. There's a lot of players that could have gone in this position. Ultimately, I went with Forsberg because of what he did for his team individually. Now, Pedri for Spain was probably the young player of the tournament here, the up-and-coming player of the tournament. Headed a lot of the stats on successful chances created, a number of chances created, that kind of thing. So, really good performance from him. Really dragged Spain through, and in certain places made them look like a real contender. In the Italy game, in the semi-final, I actually thought that Spain were the better team right up until the extra time periods. It looked like they were probably going to win the game. It didn't turn out that way. Italy won on penalties, and I think perhaps England would have had maybe a slightly better time of it in the final had Spain got through. I was certainly rooting for Spain to make the final slightly easier for England, but Italy ultimately overcame them. And yeah, I think Pedri played absolutely unbelievably in this tournament and deservedly won Young Player. And a few people had him as their player of the tournament. But I think the player of the tournament usually has to get to the final to really show that they can do it across the board. And I've picked someone who actually won it, and I think that's fair. But Pedri, certainly up there, Young Player of the tournament. Now, onto the front three, and we have Raheem Sterling, Chaser from Italy, and Patrick Schick from the Czech Republic. And let's start with Patrick Schick, who scored 5 goals at this tournament out of Czech Republic's possible 6. Dragged them through the group stage, nearly won them the group. It only took a goal to overturn England to win them the group, and that would have been the top of the group for the Czech Republic, and possibly England struggling to get through. But out of nowhere, Patrick Schick's pretty much pulled them through, and the goal that he scored against Scotland is quite frankly unbelievable. To be on the run, to shoot from nearly the halfway line, and it is nearly the halfway line, to get it over the goalkeeper and to get it so that it's just like this much from the crossbar. It's so close. It was like dropped in to the goal right underneath, and that meant the goalie can't quite grab it. And even if he does get back, the goalie's nowhere near it in fact, but if he does get back, he can't quite get there. You can only parry it over the top. He didn't. It was a goal, and it was an unbelievable goal, and certainly will be up there for goal of the tournament, which we'll talk about after the manager of the tournament. Chaser for Italy was quite frankly unstoppable at times. He somehow managed to always get the ball onto his right foot. Everyone knew that he was going to cut the ball onto his right foot and try and curl it around the goalkeeper, and defenders were really trying to get him onto his left to try and send him further down the line to put the tackle in to allow them to get a little foot on the ball, and they couldn't do it. Chaser just kept cutting in and was causing England a lot of problems in the final before he was substituted. In fact, what I will say is I don't think that if Italy hadn't scored that corner, for example, once Chaser had gone off and gone off injured, I didn't think Italy had any threat after that. So I thought perhaps England would roll to a 1-0 win. Didn't work out that way. Chaser ultimately went off and Bonucci got the goal. But yeah, he was fabulous throughout this tournament. Up there for goal of the tournament as well with Chaser. And finally, Raheem Sterling for England on the left wing. 3 goals, couple of assists as well. Always involved with every single goal that England have. And doubted by so many before the tournament. People were saying he shouldn't be called up. People were saying he shouldn't be in the side because we've got Sancho, we've got Saka, we've got Grealish, people like that. People saying that he shouldn't be there. People calling him out for having a bad season when in actual fact he had an okay season. Like, he had double figures of goals, double figures of assists. Any other player in the league, that's really good. Sterling gets slaughtered because it's not really as good as his normal performance. He's always a scapegoat, I think, perhaps, for a lot of people. A lot of people don't like him, but I think he's fantastic. I love Raheem Sterling. He's a great player. He's an idol of mine, for the things that he does off the field and the things that he does on it. I think perhaps he doesn't have the finishing that people want to see, and that's probably why people think he isn't good enough, because the reason he is good enough is because of his positioning, and that means that he gets into positions to score goals so often. If he did have the finishing, he would be 20-30 every season. He really would, and he would have scored more for England in this tournament. I don't think people understand how good his positioning is. He just knows where to be. He knows where he can receive the ball. He knows where he can turn and distribute the ball, and when he does do that, he's unbelievable and unstoppable on his day. He really is. He's unplayable. He's unplayable. Raheem Sterling is unplayable on his day. 10 dribbles in one game was better than anyone else in the tournament, pretty much across the whole tournament. So that's ridiculous. He's a really, really good player, and I think a lot of people underestimate him because perhaps they see him miss a few chances and think that that's his full game. It's not. He needs to be in the right positions. He needs to dribble. He needs to drive at defences. He needs to win free kicks. He does all of that really well. Yeah, I personally think Gareth did really well with Sterling in this tournament. I think Sterling represented England brilliantly and can wear the shirt with pride, as can all of them, but Sterling in particular did fantastically this tournament. Raheem Sterling is the final name on my team of the tournament. And the manager of the tournament to manage the team of the tournament is going to be Gareth Southgate. I think there's a couple of names you could have here. I think Mancini, obviously tournament winners, made some really good tactical decisions in the final. Perhaps didn't have quite as much to do as Gareth Southgate throughout the tournament, and I think that's why I've picked Gareth Southgate. Gareth Southgate made more decisions throughout. We'll talk about those in just a second. The Danish manager, the Czech Republic manager did really well. there's a couple of managers that definitely deserve a special mention, the Spanish manager. But ultimately, I've gone with Gareth Southgate, and I just think that he did tactical mastery throughout this tournament in a way that perhaps not a lot of people would have noticed, but it is the reason why England got there. It really is. England played in a way to not lose. England played in a way where they wanted to control games and make sure that the other team couldn't do what they wanted to do. And that's very difficult because you have to watch and train for every individual team that you play against, and that is what England did. The Germany game in particular was mastery in tactics. It really was. England changed their system, they matched the German system, and they used it to stop them doing what they wanted to do. They put Kane on the last defender to stop them coming back. Usually Kane drops back and picks the ball up in the midfield. He didn't that game. He sat on Hummels, he sat on Rudiger, and he forced them back, which meant that they couldn't do their really high aggressive attack and really quelled the Germans. There's a reason they didn't score in the game, and that reason is Gareth Southgate's tactics. Also, the two wing-back players for England pushed up, which meant that the two wing-back players for them couldn't push up. Normally, Kimmich and Guzans on the other side would have gone well past England, but now they've got Luke Shaw, who's quite happy to run past them. They've got Trippier, who's quite happy to run past them, and suddenly they're thinking, oh, I don't think I can go as far forward here because the left wing back and the right wing back, they're my guy. They're the guy that I'm supposed to be marking. So they couldn't go as far forward as they wanted to, which stops their overload, which was the Germans' whole plan. So to go to Germany, well, not to go to Germany, to take on Germany, to use the Germans' tactics and to beat them with their own game is just, bow, wonder class from Gareth Southgate. And I am a big fan of him. I really am. And a lot of people will be like, oh, but he plays boring football. Oh, but he plays this. It's not boring football, it's a tactical decision to make the game play into England's hands. And the only game it didn't work in was the Italians game. Because even in the Scotland game, we played not to lose, we didn't lose. I think Gareth's done really well there. Perhaps in the final you could say that maybe a little bit more was needed to be done. I think England's plan would have been to score in the first half and defend in the second. That would have been their plan. However, because they scored so early on in the first half, we ended up defending for 87 minutes. That doesn't work, and that anyone can tell you that. I think Gareth Southgate probably didn't have a plan for scoring so early. I don't think the Italians would have had a plan for conceding too early either, so they just immediately went for it. And then there was a couple more chances for England in the first 10 minutes where we perhaps could have gone for 2-0, but chose not to. We ended up sitting back. And yes, that was their long-term game plan, but it needed to be a plan B there. I think you needed to say, okay, we've got the early goal. Let's just pretend it's still 0-0. Let's keep going as we were going to get the second goal. And then if we get the second goal, then brilliant. We've won this game and we can go back to defending. So I think if that poor goal doesn't go in from the corner, then maybe England win it 1-0. But you never know. As a what-if story, it doesn't really matter, does it? Overall, I think Gareth Southgate did fantastically, and he is my manager of the tournament. The final award then is the goal of the tournament, and I got these goals from the UEFA's official nomination goal list video that they produced a couple of days after the tournament. I will link that down in the description so you can see which goals I'm talking about. But the goal that I have gone with to win goal of the tournament is Kevin De Bruyne versus Denmark. Now, there's a couple of reasons why this has won and not the others, but let's just go through a couple of the honourable mentions that I think absolutely deserve to win this award, but didn't quite because of my opinion on how good the goal that won was. I think Patrick Schick's goal from the halfway line, which we've already talked about, is an unbelievable piece of technique and skill that not many players can do, and he demonstrated it that he could do it right there, right then. It was fantastic. World-class goal, might be up there for the Puskas Award, did win the UEFA version of this award. Fair enough, I definitely had it up there. Modric's goal with the outside of his boot against Scotland was unbelievable. The technique on that is perfect, and the importance of that goal was really important to allow Croatia to get back into the game and allow them to go on and win it and ultimately finish second and get them into the knockout stages. So really important goal from them, and a really good quality one as well. Doesn't quite win it for me, doesn't quite get up there with Patrick Schick and Kevin De Bruyne. Paul Pogba's goal worth talking about, finished from the edge of the box, curled into the top corner. Very impressive goal, but I don't think it's as good as the Yarmolenko goal, which is very similar. They both found themselves on the edge of the penalty area and curled the ball into the top corner. However, Yarmolenko does this on the run. He receives a pass, takes on the first defender, gets it onto his left foot and curls it into the top corner. Fantastic finish from Yarmolenko, and that would have probably been my third place goal behind the halfway line goal in Kevin De Bruyne's. I think it's right up there, and there's a couple of goals in this tournament that were really, really good. Ronaldo's passing move in the group stage where he 1-2'd it past a couple of people. We've got Chaser's finishes from Italy. Yeah, some really, really good goals in this tournament. And now let's talk about Kevin De Bruyne against Denmark. Yeah, so a couple of reasons why this is my goal of the tournament, mostly because it's kind of everything. It's got everything in this goal. It's got the finish, it's got the skill, it's got the passing, it's got the teamwork. It's just a lovely, quick Belgian move, and it embodies Belgium and what I wanted to see from Belgium in this tournament, because they have the talent and the players to do this kind of goal over and over and over again. They just can't quite do it when it comes to under pressure in a knockout stage of tournament football, which is a shame. But against Denmark, Lukaku picks the ball up on the right, takes on two people, gets past them, plays it into Tielemans. There's a couple of 1-2 quick passes in the middle. It ends up falling for Kevin De Bruyne with this one-touch pass in, and with a one-touch, powerful, side-footed finish into the bottom corner, into the near post as well. The technique on that, brilliant, perfect, just right in, nearly flicks off the post but doesn't quite get there. Schmeichel's hand so close to it, just the perfect position to not be saved. Kevin De Bruyne's finish was wonderful as well, and the reason that is the goal of the tournament for me is just because it had everything. And it reminds me of that goal that you see a lot from Arsenal, where the ball is kind of backheeled and flicked through, and Wilshere ends up half volleying it home with Ramsey and players like that playing the ball through to him, and that's a world-class goal. It's probably got a little bit more skill to it than this one, but the finish is better from Kevin De Bruyne here, and I think that's why I have it as my goal of the tournament. It was a really good tournament. I just want to say that the tournament as a whole was fantastic. There's a couple of controversies. I think the incident where Denmark were forced to play a couple of hours after Christian Eriksen had collapsed was poor from UEFA. I think they could have allowed them much more time. I know that they volunteered to play, but the option was the next day or then, and it makes no sense for them to come back the next day. It needed to be a couple of days. They needed a couple of days to settle themselves, and ultimately there's a reason why they lost to Finland, and I don't think it is because the Finland are a better team. No offence to Finland, they did really well. But yeah, I think Denmark were ultimately not ready for that game yet, and there was a reason why they didn't win it. Also, the product placement incident where Coke bottles are put in front of a player. I just want to say a quick word on that, actually, because in my opinion, when all the sponsorships are at the back of you and you get photographed, you know that those sponsors are for the tournament. You know that those sponsors are just sponsoring the tournament or the competition that you're in, you know, the Premier League, the club that you're at, for example. So you might have the front shirt sponsor of a team from the Premier League behind them. And nobody associates that sponsor with the individual player. And I think that's really important to draw that distinguishment, because when you have product placement and you have a bottle of Coke or something in front of the player, when you take that individual still of that player in that moment and you have the Coke bottles in front of them, you are implying to the audience that that player drinks Coke. You are implying that. You are saying that that player does that. And I think the player, who are individual brands these days with individual rights and beliefs and things like that, and their own sponsorship details which might conflict that. For example, Pogba, for example, is a Pepsi Max ambassador, so to have Coca-Cola in front of him actually makes no sense because he is a Pepsi Max ambassador, so it's a conflict of interest there. And I think you need to give the players the right to choose which brands they represent. And I don't subscribe to this idea of, oh, if you're at the tournament you subscribe to those brands. No, that's not true, because the players are individual brands. Also, some of it is against them morally. So Ronaldo doesn't believe in sugary drinks. He thinks everyone should drink water, so he took away the bottles and said, agua, drink water. He has every right to do that. That's his opinion. And I don't think UEFA should be threatening him with fines. And even more so, Pogba has a religious objection to alcohol. So to have a Heineken bottle in front of him is quite frankly disrespectful to his religion. I think that's horrific to do. And Pogba did it so discreetly and so nicely. He just placed them under the desk, didn't make a thing of it, carried on talking. I don't think he could have done it in a nicer way, and yet UEFA have come down and said that they're going to start fining people if they move the product placement bottles. Yes, Coca-Cola have paid for it, but that doesn't mean that they can't be removed. If a player disagrees with it, a player should have the right to disagree with it. Quite frankly, it's ridiculous, and the very fact that they've suggested that they would fine and ban players from international tournaments based on the fact that they've removed a sponsor from the press conference is joke. It's laughable. It's so poor from UEFA, and those are my biggest criticisms of UEFA this tournament. I thought the refereeing overall was pretty good. Most of the decisions were mostly correct. Maybe you could argue that Jorginho could have been sent off in the final. There was a very similar red card given for Sweden against the Ukraine, where their foot was studs up, bounced off the ball, hit the guy's standing leg, and that was a red card. I mean, I'm pretty sure they almost broke his leg with that one, so I can understand why that is bad. But the reason that's a red card is because it's dangerous and out of control. So Jorginho in the final, where his studs were up, hit the ball, landed on Jack Grealish's leg, all studs onto Jack Grealish's inner thigh. That's out of control. That's dangerous. That's dangerous foul play. And I think I would have given a red card had I been in the VAR room. But overall, I think VAR did a pretty good job, which is surprising because I'm a massive hater of VAR. Obviously, there are a couple of decisions which were not given, but the reason they weren't given is because of the obvious on-field decision would be wrong. And I think some of them were like borderline, and that's the reason why it wasn't overturned. Yeah, credit to the referees throughout this tournament and the way the tournament was run as a whole. Really fantastic. It's going to live long in the memory for me personally as an England fan. To see England go so far, get so close. It was so close. We were so close. To do that is going to live long in my memory. I think I've been watching football since 2002, maybe, the Korea World Cup. Maybe a little bit before that. England winning 5-1 against Germany is kind of my earliest England memory. Yeah, so fantastic from England, and it's certainly something which I think they should be proud of. Every single member of that squad should be proud, and respect to the lads for doing as well as they did. And I hope they come home heroes, and I hope they continue to be represented as heroes. And when we get to the Qatar World Cup next year, which will be harder, by the way, the heat, even though those stadiums are air conditioning, the heat is just going to be a factor. It really is. I imagine England probably won't get much further than the quarters, not because we're not a good enough team. I think we are, and I think if it takes place somewhere else, we do. But I think teams like Brazil, teams like Colombia, teams like Argentina, who play in a hotter, warmer climate, they're going to do better here. Italy, Spain, you know, teams like that play in obviously hotter conditions are going to do better at the World Cup. So it'd be interesting to see. Obviously, I believe that it's coming home, and I will continue to say it's coming home for England. We can win the World Cup, and we can. We do have the ability to. We do have the team to. If the exact team that went to this tournament went to the World Cup, I'd be happy. The exact team. Every single one of those players deserves to be there next year, and I hope that they come back and do exactly that. England can do it as well because they've got such a young team, so we can bring back all those players. But yeah, fantastic from England. The tournament was wonderful in my opinion. Yes, it had its ups and downs. Yes, it had its highs and lows. Yes, it had its controversies. But overall, it was a great tournament. Euro 2020. Well done. So that was my Euro 2020 tournament review. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more of me, I stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/the_steak_bake. I stream Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays from 7 PM at BST. You can always follow me on Twitter and on Instagram as well. Please do. All those links will be down in the description, as well as all of the links regarding this channel as a whole. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you later. Oh, and remember, kindness always.